Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After we run you through the Dolphins news you need to know about, we get into the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it's concerning the Miami Dolphins linebacker rotation, so it should be very interesting. In his final season under contract with the Dolphins, Raekwon McMillan is expected to be used mostly on rundowns, according to Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. That's not an ideal platform for the linebacker, who has limited opportunities to show his stuff. As a second-round pick in 2017, McMillan was set to start before an ACL injury robbed him of his rookie season. In 2018, he started every game and saw 831 snaps, but in 2019, he just saw 515 snaps and missed a chunk of the year. Jerome Baker and Kyle Van Noy are likely to be the Dolphins' two leading linebackers ahead of Raekwon McMillan. So, very interesting insight into what the Dolphins want to do with that group. Now, we do run multiple fronts, so I could see all three of them being on the field at the same time. Easily could see that. And I could also see Raekwon playing a lot of outside linebacker this upcoming season. We started to do that a lot towards the end of the year, and he did a really good job, especially since we really didn't have anyone who could set the edge at the linebacker position. He's such a good physical player. He was hitting tackles with everything he had, and he was pushing, bigger, just big dudes back. I mean, he's always been a very physical run player, and I think you'll see a lot of that. I think you're going to see all three of them on the field at the same time, depending on what front and down it is. So I think you're going to see him a lot. I think he's going to have an impact on the field. Now, we've seen in the past that Raekwon in a one-on-one situation with a running back is a mismatch. I think about the Jets game. I don't know if it was, I can't remember. I think it had to have been 2018, I guess. Or was it 2019? I can't remember. Where I think it was with Bilal Powell, and it was just a bad mismatch the entire game, especially in the passing game. So, he's not shown that he's a great cover guy. He's not bad. I don't think he's not someone you're going to strategically be like, okay, we're going to leave him covering guys. It's not like Adam Gase where it's like, well, we're just going to keep doing this with Kiko Alonso. And everybody's like, don't stop doing that with Kiko Alonso. And he's like, well, we're going to keep doing it anyway. And it's like, okay, just don't fix the problem then. It's not, like that. I think the Dolphins are smart with how they use him. And like the report said, they're not going to put him in bad situations. But I do think he is not as bad as some people think. Now, like I said, in a one-on-one situation, you don't want that to be a thing. Obviously, you have better alternatives on the roster. Jerome Baker is a fantastic cover linebacker. I mean, we've seen that in his entire career. He's been a great player for us, and I'm excited to see where his development goes. But same thing with Raekwon McMillan. I mean, especially when they both were on the field last year. And again, you remember Raekwon wasn't seeing the field that much, and then he started to see the field even more as the season went on because he was playing really good. And when they both were on the field, it was a nice mix of yin and yang. You had a really good cover guy, so you could kind of hide Raekwon's lack of coverage skills because of Jerome Baker on the field, where Jerome could kind of take maybe really their biggest threat out of the game. I think the perfect example of that, and a great example of them hiding Raekwon, was against Indianapolis, where you really saw, because the Colts like to do a lot of things especially with the two tight end sets, and a lot of the things they like to do with the running back coming out of the backfield, especially when they have Nyheim Hines on the field. And if you rewatch that game, we really did a good job of hiding McMillan, even on early downs, because they do a lot of play action stuff because they're a really heavy run team, especially with Brian Hoyer on the roster. And we did a really good job of that. And Jerome really took a lot of the load off of him when they're both on the same field, because Raekwon's really taking the fourth or fifth option on a passing down. Like, he's not taking the running back or the best tight end on the field. So the Dolphins again do a really good job of really capitalizing on strengths and weaknesses of players, I feel like, within the scheme. And I'm excited to see where he can go with this. I feel like this report is kind of downplaying. I mean, it literally said he's gonna be all playing on all the downs except one, and that makes it sound bad. It's not a bad thing. That makes it sound like it's Raekwon is a bust or something. I just feel like I want to push back on that a little bit and say no. the first 2 downs are pretty important too. So I don't think this is a bad thing, even though it kind of comes off like that. Like I said, my point is the Dolphins do a great job of, even when he has to be on there and pass downs, really not making, it's not a liability because of how smart I feel like, they utilize their players. So I'm excited about this linebacker core. I've said this many times. I really like it. I think it was a good last year with Sam McGuavin. I know he was a little bit disappointing because his preseason was so good. And the regular season was kind of, I would say, a little vanilla. He had his moments for sure, especially in the pass rush game. He definitely had some impact plays when it came to that. But it's a nice, athletic, young linebacker core, and it's the best we've had in a long time. This used to be a very big problem for the Dolphins for a long time, especially covering people with their linebackers, and now it's not a problem. They have athletic guys who can match up very well and a very good scheme, so I'm very happy about it, and I'm very excited to see their development. So again, it comes off as kind of a bad thing, but I feel like you're going to see a lot of good from Raekwon McMillan going into his second year in Brian Flores' system. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins safety Bobby McCain expected to be ready for Week 1. Now, people forget, Bobby, he hurt his hip. So let's get into this news story. Dolphins safety Bobby McCain saw his 2019 campaign cut short by, it was a shoulder injury. I don't know why I thought it was a hip injury. Shoulder injury, and he subsequently underwent surgery. McCain's recovery is going well, and he plans to be ready for the start of the 2020 season. As Jackson and Beasley note, McCain is likely to remain at safety. The 2015 fifth-rounder spent his first 4 years of his career at cornerback, but he converted to safety last season, and he held up reasonably well in coverage in 9 games, 8 starts. He recorded 25 tackles and 2 interceptions. I disagree with this. You guys know this. I don't think he's a good safety. He's just very inconsistent, and I don't really like him anywhere else but slot corner. I just don't think his drop-off in play is significant when it comes to, the reason, like I've said this a million times, but the reason he even got the contract extension is because of his play in the slot. That's where he should be. I'm not really sure why they thought he was the best free safety option. I think it had something to do with communication at the time. I can't remember. And, that's very important, especially on the back end of the defense. But, it's kind of rough. He's very meh at that position. And, it's weird that you pay the man the money that we've paid him. And it's not like, a bad contract or anything. But you would like to see him play at his best position. And hopefully that happens at some point. And especially if he misses time in training camp. And practices and stuff of that nature before the season starts and preseason, I don't think he's going to start. I think whoever, that lineup is used to starting there will play. So Bobby better be careful about that. If he misses significant time before the season starts, and it could be a short off season. We have no idea how this thing is going to break down. But I wouldn't be surprised if his job was taken at that position. Especially since he's expected to be ready for Week 1, kind of sounds like he might miss time before the season starts. So, I could see his job being taken because of his absence. So it's going to be an interesting thing to keep your eye on. It's the only hole on that defense is that free safety position. And I'm excited to see where it gets settled at, but I'm hoping Bobby gets moved back down to slot corner, and they figure out something else for that free safety position. I feel like his size, everybody says in the NFL, size is a skill, and it's true. He's a smaller player. His body type, his play style, his physicality when he's in the slot cornerback position, it all should point to him. We just move back to the slot. I just don't get it, and Nick Needham played when we moved him inside, he played really well too. So it's not like they have a problem there. It's just, he's better here, If you want to put Bobby McCain somewhere, just put him there. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. You have Brandon Jones, you have Noah Igbenogany, whom possibly could be groomed to play free safety. We're not sure. His skill set is very, He's a physical player. I'm talking about Noah Igbinoghene right now, and he's a very good open field tackler. He was in the SEC, and he's a really good cover player, which you need to be at safety in this system. So I could see him being groomed to be that at some point during this season, because the slot cornerback position is, to me, filled, whether Bobby plays it or not. I think Nick Needham's got to play somewhere, and when he did play inside, he played very well. So, in the blitz game, he played well, cover game, all that stuff with Nick Needham. So I could totally see him playing that position too. So we'll see what happens. It's gonna be very interesting to see where the secondary ends up by the time the regular season starts. So let's get on to the next news story. This is concerning Josh Rosen. And I think we talked about this last week, but this is a kind of a new update. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins are nowhere near ready to give up on quarterback Josh Rosen, according to a source who spoke with Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. Rosen was a disappointment in his 6 appearances, 3 starts last year, but the Finn source says he showed some promise in practice towards the end of the year. Another factor, the Dolphins probably don't want to trade Rosen for pennies on the dollar 1 year after coughing up a second-round pick for him. Obviously. This to me is a no-brainer. We talked about it enough last week. There's no way you trade him this year. It sucks, though, if you're a fan, because we don't know how the training camp situation is going to work. Because actually going to see the training camp and practices this year is more exciting than probably any other year because of how competitive that quarterback room is going to be and how talented it is. It's going to be really fun watching that in practices and scrimmages and stuff like that. I don't know if we're even going to get that this year, which is super disappointing because obviously you have the young hotshot coming in with Tua. You have Josh Rosen, who's very talented in his own right, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's coming off of a team MVP. So it would be really fun to watch that. And it sucks that we might not be able to see some of that kind of stuff, or video clips and stuff of that nature. I mean, maybe we get some of that, but I just don't know how long the offseason is going to be, and that kind of sucks. It's always fun breaking down the practices on their show and, who's doing well and who's doing not so well. So hopefully we get that. And, Josh and Ryan and Tua, it's going to be a very fun competition. Speaking of the quarterback competition, we have actually another news story about it. And this comes from Bleacher Report, I think. Or this first was reported from Bleacher Report, and now we're going to get this news from the Finsider, I believe. Is Tua Tagovailoa starting Week 1 a foregone conclusion for the Dolphins? Mike Freeman from Bleacher Report wrote his 10-point stance article last week. According to every coach I've spoken to, it's a foregone conclusion that Tua will beat out veteran journeyman Ryan Fitzpatrick and start Week 1 against the Patriots September 13th. That is what Bleacher Report Mike Freeman reported. And again, we were just talking about the quarterback competition. I don't think this is true by any stretch of the imagination. Not by the way the culture that Brian built. He hasn't even played in a they haven't seen him in person. This to me is bull, and I guess just something to write about. It doesn't mesh with everything else that we've known from this organization so far. How they do things, like the fact that they haven't even seen him with the other teammates and other players, running the system, all that stuff. There's just no way they're like, yeah, he's going to start. We expect him to go. No, that's not how Brian Flores does things. That's not how this organization does things. They're going to wait and, just let it play out. It's a foregone conclusion that he's starting Week 1. That could happen. It definitely could happen. But not until we see practices and we hear things, and then we can make a conclusion on that. Not even seeing that, or having him again in Changale. We haven't even seen him in Changale's offense yet. So that's just not how they do things down there. We've seen that with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen. The best man does win, and it did happen last year where we're like, okay, clearly he is better than him, so let's make the switch. And we saw that, even though I feel like the organization wanted Josh to play. The coaching staff won out in the end and was like, this gives us the better chance to win. To me, this report is meaningless. I think it's fake. Based off of everything we've known of how the organization is ran, it just doesn't mesh well. I could never see Brian Flores being like, this guy, who's a rookie, by the way, who has not even gotten into the system yet is going to be the starter. And I know it says they expect him to be. I don't think that's a thing either. I think, we've heard other reports that they love Ryan Fitzpatrick and they love what he brings to the table. I don't think they expect anything. I think they're just going to be in wait-and-see mode. That's just my 2 cents on it. I just don't believe that they're looking that far ahead to who will be the starter in New England, or they expect anybody to be that right now. They have to look at, and take it all in. That's not how they run things. That is not how New England runs things. And whoever is the best in the offseason will get that job. Now, doing a little bit of a segue from that and a little bit of a U-turn, if I was the Dolphins, and I know Tua is beating out everybody within, the competition, to me it comes down to the offensive line and whether I would start him week 1 or not. And I've said this many times before, but there's a lot of new faces in that room. There's a lot of young players in that room. I want to see that come together first. And if it does go well, because that's going to really come down to if the Dolphins are much better than they were a year ago, is their offensive line play. Then you make that decision, because you cannot throw Tua in. Let's say that offensive line is the same as it was a year ago. It's not going to be. It's going to be way better. But let's just say it's that bad. Tua won't. That's not obviously. It's not good for a rookie to be behind an offensive line like that. It's just not. I don't care what team. If you throw a rookie quarterback in that kind of a situation, you're just a very bad organization. I don't care how bad you want to see him play. It's just not a good idea, and you're really not giving him a chance. So, to me, it comes down to the offensive line, and I don't think the Dolphins are looking that far ahead because of those things. Everything has to come into context, and really just you have to get the feel of everything, and then you can make the decision on that. I don't think the Dolphins are even thinking about that. They just they want to know, hey, they're thinking about the first practice. They're thinking about, hey, how is the training camp going to go? How is we haven't even had a rookie OTA, so I doubt any of that is happening in the organization. So let's move on from that. It's an interesting news report. It doesn't sound very credible in my opinion. Let's go to this next news story, and this comes from Sports Illustrated, and this article is it's opinionated piece. This is by I can't see it. Go to Team Stream, click on it. It's a very interesting article. We're not going to read the entire thing, obviously. So if you're interested in why he thinks this, then go to Bleacher Report. But he ranks the 4 best defensive lines in the AFC East, and I think this is an interesting thing. Number 1, he has the Buffalo Bills, and I'm not even going to argue with that. I would sound silly and delusional if I were going to tell you anything different. I think the Bills have the most proven and the most depth out of any defensive line in the AFC East, so I will say that is true. Second is the Miami Dolphins. I think that is 1,000% true. When you break down, especially since the Patriots lost so much on their front, this doesn't surprise me. You got Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah, Christian Wilkins, Devon Godshaw. You got Weaver coming in. Jason Strowbridge, who should be a good rotational piece. Like, they have a lot really good going on there, and I'm very excited for Shaq Lawson too, and Raekwon Davis, and I think I mentioned all 3 DTs, and it's a very good front, and I'm very excited about it. Very versatile. Each one of those players does things very well. Third on his list, he has the New England Patriots. I completely agree with that. Their starting line looks like they have Henry. Oh, excuse me. Let me go up. I was looking at the Jets. This is the New England Patriots line. They have Nick Cole, Derek Rivers, John Simon, Bo Allen, Tayshawn Bauer, Adam Butler, Byron Cowart, Lawrence Guy, Bill Murray. He's coming in straight off of. I was trying to think of a Bill Murray movie. I don't know. Joke is ruined. Chase Winovich, Dietrich Wise. So yeah, it's a very shaky defensive line at best. A lot of young players on that line. Not a lot of size either. Very, very interesting how that defensive line is going to work out. Dead last is the New York Jets. I don't think this is any debate. They have Henry Anderson, Dominique Davis, John Franklin Myers, Sterling Johnson, Kyle Phillips, Nathan Shepard, Wyatt Ray, Quinnen Williams. They have some young players there. They got the guy from Florida. It's a very defensive line. Not a lot of size to that defensive line either. They lost a lot of size with Leonard Williams, especially over the years. They had Damon Harrison, Sheldon Richardson. I mean, that was one of the biggest defensive lines in the league, and they just kind of chopped it up. And they still have Steve McClendon, but man, they had a physical, big defensive line for a long time there that they just tore apart. So just to recap, number 1 is the Buffalo Bills. This is ranking the AFC East defensive lines according to Sports Illustrated. Number 2 is the Miami Dolphins. Number 3 is the New England Patriots, and number 4 is the New York Jets. I think I would rank it the same way. I think that's pretty on the nose there. The Bills, I don't think we broke down their defensive line, but they have. Let me see here. I'm trying to find it again. Let's see here. Okay, here they go. They have Mario Addison, Vernon Butler. Who else do they have? Obviously, Jordan Phillips left. A.J. Epinesa, Jerry Hughes, Jonathan Woodard's up there. Quentin Jefferson, Ed Oliver, Harrison Phillips, Vincent Taylor's up there. It's not as good as you would think, though. Like, looking at this, I'm like, you know what? It's not, like, Mario Addison's, I guess, is their best pass rusher. Unless you want to count, I mean, people may not know who Mario Addison is. People, Jerry Hughes, but Mario Addison is 11 sack a year guy, so that's basically Jerry Hughes. It's not like there's not a J.J. Watt or a Von Miller on that defensive line, but it is an all-around good group. So I'm not, I think it's closer than people might think, but, and I'm really curious to see how A.J. Epinesa plays in a 4-3 front. I don't think that's his best front that he could play on, but we'll see how that works. Because he's not much of... I don't think he's going to be a 10-sack-a-year guy in the NFL. I think he'll be around, 8 or 9. Maybe he has a career year where he has 12. I just think he's going to be a really good all-around defensive lineman. And I really loved him in the draft, and I think he fits the Patriot system best. But we'll see how that all works out. But, yeah, I agree with that defensive line ranking. I don't have any problems with that. That's it for the news, ladies and gentlemen. And one thing I want to point out, too, when you talk about the AFC East race, before we get into the thank you, Nate, this list made me think, if you really rank each positional group in the AFC East, the Dolphins are in the top 3, top 2 almost, in every single category. Quarterbacks, they're got to be in the top 2, in my opinion. We just ranked defensive line top 2. Offensive line, they got to be in the top 3 in that. And most of the offensive lines in that division are, the Bills, I would say, is the best, I guess. Maybe the Patriots. And the Dolphins have to be in the top 3 of that. That's probably their worst positional group. Secondary have to be in the top 2 in that. Receivers definitely in the top 2 in that. Most of the positions they're top 2 in almost every single one of them, except offensive line. And maybe there's something else I'm forgetting. But I don't think the Bills have a better secondary than them. The only one that I could be like, okay, maybe you can make an argument that they have a better one is the Patriots. But the Bills definitely don't. And if anybody wants to bring that heat in here, then let's bring that heat in here, because they just don't. They don't have a better secondary than the Dolphins. So, and I just admitted they have a better defensive line. I'm not trying to be crazy out here. I'm being fair. And they probably have the second or first best. I don't think the Dolphins have the second or best offensive line in the league, or AFC East right now. We would looking at it on paper, those guys have proven more than ours, and we'll just have to see how things shake out. So that's the only one I can see them at 3. But the Jets are dead last in most of these categories. So if I have to hear any pro Jets AFC East stuff, I just can't. I can't hear that kind of stuff. If they had, Mekhi Becton was their best draft pick. Denzel Mims and the guy that got everybody's freaking out like it's some kind of game changer, for God's sakes. Okay, so what did everybody else do in the AFC East? They got way better too. And the Jets were bad last year. They really didn't fix the offensive line that much, other than Mekhi Becton. I know they signed some guys like Van Roten from Carolina. They're okay. They're okay guys. They're not great. Like I said, I think Mekhi could, obviously make a big impact on that team, but I don't know, man. It's just weird how people talk about the AFC East and somehow the Jets get brought up a lot, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know. I just running back. I just thought of that. I guess the Jets. If you just build it off the back of Le'Veon Bell, but their depth isn't that great when it comes to running backs. That might be the only one that they get into the top 3 because of Le'Veon Bell, I guess. But and I know I was making that sound like it's nothing, because it is. It's not nothing, but. I just feel like most of the categories they're dead last in. Let's move on to the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen, where we answer fans' questions. This first question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey Skaggs, choose wisely. What do you think is the Dolphins' primary color, aqua or teal?" Well, they changed it, obviously, from... So what? I don't know. It's a very weird question. And I'm not really good with colors, but... Obviously, they changed it from the new look ones to, maybe, mid-2000s, early 2000s, through on, really up until 2012. I guess teal, I would say. Depending on what you think teal looks like, I guess. But to be honest with you, they all look the same. I mean, I know one's lighter than the other, but it really doesn't matter to me, because white is my favorite jersey color. So I love the white old school jerseys the most. And I love the 2012 jerseys. I really like those jerseys. This next question comes from HD. He says, "How do you think Isaiah Ford will do this season?" I hope he does well. I hope he gets his fair shake, because he performed very nicely at the end of the year last year, and it's going to be a very stacked receiver competition, and seems like we've been saying that for a while now, and there's a lot of talent there, and especially for that slot position, you got Albert Wilson, Isaiah Ford, Allen Hurns. I mean, there's a lot of competition there, so I hope he gets a fair shake, because he did very well in that system. I think he fit that system. I mean, he was like a New England slot receiver. He was playing like one, and he has a lot of size, and I hope this system fits him just as well. This next question comes from SM. He says, "Do you think Hunt will win a starting spot, keeping in mind we signed Flowers? Will Hunt play tackle or guard?" I feel like he's a guard, in my opinion. I think he's a guard. I think Jesse Davis and Austin Jackson should start both tackle positions, and I think your guards, that's where things get a little crazy, and it's really just what you guys want there. I mean, it's very subjective, because I don't think there's an objective. That guy is the best guard. Eric Flowers is the only one where I would say he's a very good guard. I think he's probably the best guard on the roster, because he played really well for them at guard last year for the Redskins. So, and they were a very run heavy team, and he did very well in that system, in pass blocking sets and in run blocking sets. So yeah, I like Flowers. He's a good player. This next question comes from SM. He says, "When Miami traded back to number 30, all of the running backs were still on the board. A third cornerback is a great toy to have, but now that Brady is out of the East, maybe it's a little too late. Should Miami have jumped on their franchise running back much the way Oakland did the previous year?" That's a great question, SM. They ended up getting Matt Breida, so that's not a bad consolation prize. So it's not that bad. But when you think about it, DeAndre Swift is so overrated. They could have gotten one in the second round if they wanted to. They had enough to move around the board, and that's the really only criticism I had of that draft, is they could have moved around the board a lot more than they did. Even though they did do it a few times. They did it to get what is his name? Solomon Kinley, and they did it to get, I think they did it to get Curtis Weaver too. So, if I can remember correctly. And they did it to get Matt Breida. So, I just feel like in the earlier rounds, they could have been a little bit more aggressive. They did trade down to get trade down once in the earlier rounds, but that's not really what I'm talking about. So, to answer your question, did they miss out? No. I don't think they missed out. They have two very good running backs that do what they do very well. They like to run a multiple back system. It's not really a one back thing, and a lot of teams are. I think most of the teams in the league are that way now. There's very few that aren't. So yeah, I think what ended up happening is fine. I don't think it's a big L for them. I think they are happy and content with what they have, and there's still talent there. You got Laird, who's a very good. I mean, I want to see him switch to slot receiver. To be honest with you, I just would like to see that. And Kalen Ballage, I think I'm totally off that train. That train let me off a while ago. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, we've heard it a million times. Frank Gore loves him. Jason Taylor loved Charles Harris, so it doesn't really, don't put too much stock into that. But yeah, I don't think. I mean, the question is, the question is, should Miami have jumped on their franchise running back? No, I think they should have, because of what happened. I mean, at the time I would have been like, yeah, they probably should have, because now we don't have a backup running back, but. We do now. I mean, I was very worried about getting out of that draft without one, and they did. So I don't know. I think it ended up all working out. I think it's going to be fine. This next question comes from Hunter. He says, I pray every day that this doesn't happen. But I'm wondering, what would your reaction be if the first place in Tua's career, he breaks his leg? I don't even know why you're putting those vibes out there, Hunter. That's not cool, bro. Don't be putting those vibes out there. A broken leg is a very hard one. I mean, it's not a very common injury. It's not like a knee ligament thing. That's more rare than soft tissue stuff and stuff like that. So, I think you're gonna be okay on the broken leg thing. Let's not put that into existence, because that would obviously be a killer. Broken legs aren't as bad as, like, maybe a dislocated knee, like what Teddy Bridgewater suffered. So I don't even know why we're comparing. Let's just hope that never happens. You know what I mean? I mean, my reaction would be obviously it would be distraught. This next question comes through Beef. He says, "Hey Skaggs, just because the Dolphins probably couldn't learn Chad O'Shea's complex offense, does that mean Shane Gailey's offense is way inferior compared to his?" It's not comparing the two. It's really just looking at Chad as a singular thing and saying, what happened? And it's I don't think Chand is inferior necessarily. Because it's not inferior, I guess. All offenses come down to execution. And scheme is a big part of it, obviously. You don't want to get monotonous in what you're doing. But at the same time, it's just weird looking at Chad's situation and thinking, what happened, man? I mean, and I know a lot of people want to give a majority of the credit to Fitzy, and obviously he deserves it, but it's just a weird, because, it's hard to quantify certain things because of the success that a lot of guys had in the system that was installed, and not to mention the fact that Chad has a really good past of developing receiving talent and skill position talent. He has, he's done a very good job in that department. And is it a coincidence that when he shows up that those guys have career years? Like, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I think the question is, from Beef, he says, is Chad O'Shea's complex offense, does that mean Shane Gailey's offense is way inferior compared to his? No, I don't think that's what that means, no. But I just think Chad, it's just a weird thing, and if the young players couldn't get it, if they couldn't grasp it, if it was hurting them, it was hurting the offense, but that argument doesn't hold water, in my opinion. What? I don't know. It doesn't hold water, because they were still running the same offense that Chad installed. Whether Ryan was making checks in that offense. They practiced it. He was making checks in it. You know what I mean? So it's not like they were, writing a new playbook with Chad's, he was still calling plays. And if Ryan was making checks at the line and running other things, it was still in that offense. And remember, in the report, it said Ryan Fitzpatrick was surprised about the move. He was even surprised about it. So what does that say about it? I don't even want to get into the whole Chad O'Shea thing. I'm done with it. I don't care anymore. We're on to the next guy. It's fine. It happened. It happened. We have to move on. I think Chad is a good coach. I don't care what anybody says. I think he's a good coach. Whether he's a good offensive coordinator or not, who knows? because we can't. I mean, I don't know who to get. We're not even going to get into the whole weeds, but he is a good coach. He was a coach for 10 plus years in New England. He developed a lot of good receivers. We know that for a fact. He's a good coach. I think that has to have a stamp of approval on that one. I just don't want to get into the Chad O'Shea weeds. This next question comes from HD. He says, how do you think all NFL rookies are going to do this season due to the COVID-19? J.J. Watt said it's like a lockout. It really is dependent on how talented the rookie is. I think it's going to come down to that. But it could hurt some guys' development. This next question comes from Ethan. He says, if both healthy, who is your guy to lead the team? Chad Pennington or Ryan Fitzpatrick? It has to be Chad Pennington. If Chad never had the 2 shoulder surgeries, I'm putting that into this. If he never got hurt, even with the Jets, he would have been a borderline Hall of Fame type of a guy. Like, he was very much like a Joe Montana. I'm not saying he was Joe Montana, but that's his play style. Like, he was super accurate, made really good decisions with the football. If he never got hurt, his career would have looked a lot different. And so I'm going to have to go with Chad Pennington on that one. And he wouldn't have even been a Dolphin if he didn't get hurt. So, this next question comes. That's a great question, though, Ethan. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, "Hey, Skaggs, I've seen a lot of talk about the quarterbacks in our division, and for some reason, everyone still considers Sam Darnold to be the best quarterback in the division. Any idea why? I haven't seen anything all that impressive from him. He's a great turnover machine at quarterback. Your thoughts?" Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, if you want to look up Sam Darnold's stats, and his stats aren't everything, the production is something. And if you look at his stats, it's very underwhelming in terms of touchdown to interception ratio. And I know people are like, oh, he didn't have any talent. That's not true. He had okay talent. It wasn't great. He had Robbie Anderson, who got a big deal in Carolina. He was one of the better deep threats in the league, so he could structure a defense. You have Le'Veon Bell, one of the best running backs in the league. You have James Crowder, one of the best slot receivers in the league. So it's not like they had. When I say one of the best slot receivers, I mean, like, he's definitely, if you had to make, here's are the top 10 guys in the slot, he's definitely on that list. But it's not like he didn't have people to throw the ball to. The offensive line wasn't great, but we've seen other quarterbacks. Like, what is Sam Darnold? What are you saying he is? I've seen on ESPN people call him Ben Roethlisberger, which is the most egregious one. It doesn't even play anything like him. He doesn't have the size, strength. He's not pushing linebackers and defensive ends around like it's nothing. So that's not even close. You hear the comparison to Tony Romo. I don't understand it, because you watch Sam Darnold play and it's like, okay, he's very inconsistent. He has good games and he has bad games. He goes on these cold hot streaks all the time. He doesn't really throw tight window throws on a consistent basis. If it's open, he's there. He's got it. I don't know. It doesn't. I know it was, he's young, all this stuff, but we haven't seen it from him yet. I just don't know what Sam Darnold is. What are you saying Sam Darnold is? Is he a top 15 guy, or are you saying he can be a top 10 guy? Because if you're saying he can be a top 10 guy, he didn't carry. He has not carried one. Put Sam Darnold on Deshaun Watson's team in Houston, you get worse results, like way worse results. I don't think the Texans are going to be a good team this year. I think at best they're a 500 team. So you put Sam Darnold on that team, it's even worse than that. Like, what is he? What are you trying to say he is? Because I've heard a lot of different people like, oh, he's this and that. He's not this and that. He's not better than Josh Allen. It's not even close. He's not better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm not going to say he's better than, or we don't know about Tua yet. He hasn't played yet. Even though I think Tua, I mean, if you just look at their college film, and I don't know, college film, if you just look at their college play, it's not even close. Tua's better. So I just don't know what you want to say. It depending on what you want to say Sam Darnold is, because then I would give you a different argument for both things. If you're saying he's a top 10 guy, that's a different argument, because he's clearly not a top 10 guy. He hasn't shown at any point that he's a top 10 guy. At any point ever. He can't carry an offense. He's a game managing type guy. He has to have people around him to get the best out of him. We know that about Sam Darnold. Now, is he a top 12, top 15 guy? We'll have to see, because he could be elevated to that with a better roster. But as is, he is not a top 15, top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. So, no. Even though I would say Josh Allen is that. So, not top 10, but I would say he's top 12 to 15. So, yeah, I just don't really get the Sam Darnold love. I don't get it. It's almost like people don't watch Jets games. I don't know. I know this. If you ask Dolphins fans this, and they're in the division, they watch both teams every single year. Who would you rather play, not a Buffalo Bills, a Josh Allen-led offense or a Sam Darnold-led offense? It's not even close. They would all say Sam Darnold. That has to tell you something. I think everybody in the division would say that, by the way. If you're not a Jets fan or a Bills fan, I think they would. If you ask Patriots fans, they would we would rather play Sam Darnold. That means something. Not these people who are analysts on ESPN who don't watch AFC East games are like, oh, Sam Darnold is really good. No, he's not. Ask the people in the division. Ask the teams in the division who they would rather play. I guarantee you it would be 100% the other side every single time. So, yeah, that's one of the dumbest arguments and things that I've heard said. Now, if you're going off projection and what he might be, I can't even say anything about that. I'm just going off what we have seen. And it's the whole, Bill Polian thing. You know what he is by year 3. So we'll see by year 3. If he has another year like he's had, then we know. This is just who Sam Darnold is. Let's move on. This next question comes from Beef. He says, Skaggs, do you think Tua will be on the cover of Madden in the near future? Also, do you think he'll share the cover with Dan Marino? That's not how things work. I think I don't really know why Madden 25 had Barry Sanders. I know it was the 25th anniversary, but that's the only time in recent times, that we've seen a cover athlete that's from a different era. So, no, I don't think Dan would be on the cover, but yeah, Tua definitely has a shot to be on the cover. This next question comes from Ethan. He says, hey, Skaggs, what would have been your play call? This is a great question, by the way, Ethan. He says, hey, Skaggs, what would have been your play call for the 2-point conversion attempt in the Redskins game? This is a great question. I would spread it out. I would spread formation, one back in the backfield, maybe run a Texas route with him in the backfield. I would try to single side Mike Gesicki, and maybe you throw a fade there. And what I mean by that, I would probably stack the formation to the right and try to single him up on the left, because they have to respect Devontae Parker on a fade. And maybe you don't really want to do a stack formation, because I think it's less likely you throw a fade to that. If you're a smart defensive coordinator, they're not throwing a fade with a stacked formation. It's very hard to do that. So then you would probably double cover Mike Gesicki at that point. But I would try to get a lot of one-on-one coverage with our skill position. So I would spread out Patrick Laird in the backfield, just really let Fitzy make a play and let our skill positions get a lot of one-on-one coverage. And if it's zone, we really stress out your zone coverage too with all that. If we spread the field like that. So I would have won it with the spread formation, and really what play call you want to call is up to you. That's a great question, though, Ethan. This next question comes from SM. He says, 2 of my top 10 players, Queen and Dobbins, both went to the Ravens, right in front of us. I know there were many holes to fill, but I think sometimes Miami gets too cute or overthinks it instead of taking the sure thing. Thoughts? They didn't need a middle linebacker, even though he would have been a very good player on this defense. Dobbins is in front. Okay, so Dobbins, yes, they could have taken if they wanted to. He says, do I think we overthink it is the question? No, I just don't think. I mean, we don't know what any of these guys are going to be. So who knows? Maybe they're not very good. We'll have to see. So. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. I don't think they're overthinking. I just think that they went with what they thought was the best. And we'll see if they're right. This next question comes from John. He says, Skaggs, is the number 13 for Marino and 83 your birth year? Asking for a friend. I'm going to leave that alone and just have you guys speculate on that. But I will say one of those numbers is definitely wrong. This next question comes from The Bridge. At The Bridge. He says, we seem to be building a culture of lines filled with great big 350 guys, 350-pound guys that can run the ball and stop the run. But in the modern NFL, you win with the passing game, and that includes pass rushing and pass blocking. Are we running the risk of building a team to win Super Bowl 40? No, because the Dolphins build their defense from the secondary, then they go to the defensive line. That's why you've seen so much investment in the secondary. So the Dolphins know what's up. But you do have to have a running game. I don't care what anybody says. That's just how if you look at all the great teams, even in the last 3 or 4 years, now the Chiefs are an exception to that. But, you look at the guys who've had the most success in the playoffs, they all have really good running games and that won the Super Bowl. Look at the 49ers. I mean, they had the best running attack in the league. So, yes, you still have to have a running game to be successful in the NFL. And you have to have a secondary in today's game to win on a consistent basis in the regular season, I think. All right, let's move on from there. That was a good question, though, by At The Bridge. This next question comes from Richard. He says, how about the Dolphins signing ex-running back Devontae Freeman? The Dolphins could never have enough good runners, especially after last season. That's a great idea. I never even thought of that. I wouldn't mind it. By the way, you talk about someone killing the University of Miami for a long time. Devontae Freeman had his moments, that's for sure, when he was with Florida State. But yeah, I think that would, if I could talk, yeah, I like Devontae Freeman. I think he's still a good player. I think he's a great rotational back. He's not a starting back. He's injury riddled. So, but I like Devontae Freeman a lot. He's really fun to watch. This next question comes from John. He says, "Hi, Skaggs. Firstly, I'm a little disappointed you were unwilling to reveal information from your personal life before. It's okay, though. You still put on an awesome podcast. I really appreciate that, John." And he says, I forgive you. Here's my question. He says, if every member of the Dolphins organization got eaten by a two-headed space monster... You guys are on point with the questions today. He says, what team would you root for? In other words, what's your second favorite team in the NFL, third, fourth, and fifth? Okay, so... I would say this is going to be weird. I know every time I say this, it's got to sound weird, but my brother is a huge Panthers fan. So, and I know because of the Cam Newton era and all that other stuff. So, I would say I don't know. I don't think I would have another. To be honest with you, I think I would just watch the NFL at that point. I don't think I could give the same love and passion I could to another team. I just don't think I could do it. But I would say that, I guess, the Panthers. I would say the Panthers because I've over the years watched a lot of one of those games, and yeah, I would say, I guess, the Panthers. Second, third, and fourth. I just don't have one. This next question comes from John. He says, if you could open your eyes tomorrow morning, and again, at that point, I would just watch the NFL. This next question comes from John, if I could speak and think. He says, if you could open your eyes tomorrow, no longer as Skaggs 1383, but as any player, coach, or front office man in the Miami Dolphins organization, who would you be for the rest of your life? No take-backs or go-backs. I'd say Brian Flores. He's a cool dude. And I know that's because he has, I would say I guess I would want to be a GM, actually, because I don't know if I want to be Chris Greer, but I would want to be a GM. It's kind of weird to be like, I would take over Chris's body, I guess. I don't know how that's framed. I guess you're saying what position you would want to be. I don't know why I thought of it that way. I would say I would rather be a GM than a head coach, because just picking players, to me, is a lot easier than scheming and, dealing with personalities and being a leader, all that stuff. It's way easier to just be like, all right, this guy's pretty good at football. So yeah, I would say GM. That is it for this week's podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it, and I have a lot of fun making it every single week. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do making it. I am Skaggs3883, and I will see you guys and again, guys, killed the questions this week. I will see you guys in the next one.